All right, we're moving into to the counseling, and you'll see that we just put the bits and the pieces together in the counseling session. But the first thing I want to do is look at the unique self-test. And I like what Ray says about this is know your tools. So what is the tool that we're using? The first thing I want to do is take some of the mystery out of the unique self-test, because people try to get out of it what it won't give. And I know whole counseling programs are built on understanding your uniqueness and your personality. We're not doing that. What we're really trying to do is to understand why messages affected you in a unique way, and why you have brothers and sisters that lived in the same family, but they responded differently because they're different. And what we want to do is just get a basic idea of the person that I'm talking to. As I began to develop this material, it came out of me sitting with people day after day after day and beginning to see common characteristics in certain people. And I would see that to the point that someone would come in and I would look at them and say, you like attention to detail, you like security, you hate the unknown, don't you? You love truth, you can't stand it when someone lies to you. And they'd say, yes, that's me. And they acted like I was a fortune teller or a palm reader or a prophet. How did he know all of that about me? How did you know that? And I would stop them and say, look, this isn't magic, but your personality's in your soul and your uniqueness is in your soul. And I was just recognizing by the way you respond, by the way you answer questions, those kind of things, that you were a unique person. And it's helping me understand you and disciple from your shoes. So it's not magic, it's not difficult. We used to do an 8-hour conference on the personality and the different aspects as you raise children and what you do in a marriage, what kind of job you should have, how you see your world, what you do under pressure. We did all those kind of things. And then what happened is people would leave the conferences and they weren't talking about Christ, they were talking about their personalities. And it became an obsession with personality. And I just saw how easily good became the enemy of the best. And so what we did is we condensed that to about 30 minutes in a conference now. And it is very valuable, as we've seen in marriage and in understanding ourselves and understanding others, getting in their shoes. We want to do that. But I am not exchanging that for Christ. And we'll keep reminding of this. The best teaching in the world, the Abiding Life teaching, Christ in you, the hope of glory, as a doctrine and as a teaching won't keep you in the fire. It's to point you to Christ. Nothing else will keep you. And when you use this as your whole model of counseling, it gets absolutely ridiculous. Because what people will say then is, in all this personality counseling that you see, is that your real problem is your personality needs aren't met. Well, first of all, what are you going to do in India where you get your wife picked for you in your vocation and you're not getting your personality needs met? Then if you got a thinker and a feeler living together and you say to the thinker you're not getting your personality needs met, the feeler needs to change to meet them. Now the feeler's changed and their needs aren't met. So it becomes chaos after a while. Then it even is complicated into more chaos when you go through and you say, okay, part of being a thinker is being critical and now you need to change that. Well, how do you change your personality when I just told you it can't be changed? And so there was a lot of flaws in all of that for me. And then, of course, as you know, and we have it in the book there, that if anybody knows while you're counseling them or lecturing, that personality studies with the melancholy, the phlegmatic, the sanguine, and the cleric all have their roots in astrology. All they've got to do is mention that to you and it's over. Now, medicine has a lot of its roots in witchcraft, but we don't cast out all witchcraft. I mean, we don't cast out all witchcraft. Yeah. We need to hit a happy medium, which means strike a joyful witch. But we don't cast out all of medicine because of some of its roots, and I'm not trying to cast out all of personality, but it is not my focus. And the thing that we're obsessed with, it helps us in understanding a person and getting on. It's not a deep, dark secret how it all works. And so we want to know our tool and know exactly what we want to get out of this tool. If you look at our test here, we have 9 categories with 32 possible points. That would be around 6 trillion different blends. Now, we're not trying to milk a mouse on this thing and get your exact blend and be able to prophesy how you're going to eat today and what you're going to pick at the table and all that. And that's what a lot of tests try to do. We are not trying to get that narrow in this test. That isn't our goal. It's for me to have 10 or 15 words that describe your uniqueness and to know you can't change that, and that's affected the way you've seen your world and the messages you've gotten and the identity that you've developed, either positive or negative. That's our goal. That's all I want out of it. And people will just say, give me more, more. Is there more in there? Well, I purposely made the test so there wasn't more. We give basic blends and we give the characteristics and we want to know who you are. And personality shifts. Because you're one thing socially, it'll change a little bit under stress, and then it'll change in the area of affection. Now, I had you the other day read through the characteristics of the thinker, the feeler, and the doer. Now, I want you to mark your own test. I don't want you to take the test. I want you to go to this page right here and put a mark there of where you believe you are socially. That's in the workplace, with other people, at church. Where do you think you fit in terms of a thinker? In terms of doer? In terms of feeler? Where do you see yourself? So mark that for me. And you can mark it off to the side if you want to, because we're going to use a different color in a minute. I want you to mark it first, and then we're going to take the test, and we'll see how close you are. Because again, I believe uniqueness and personalities is a study in the obvious. Okay? Then under stress, what do you do? Do you pause? Do you stall out? Do you withdraw? Do you quit? Do you obsess? Do you want to act? Do you get impulsive? What do you do under stress? You know, one of the things I almost always do in counseling is if someone disagrees with me, I'll go with what they say. Because they definitely know themselves better than I do. And so if someone's being honest and they tell you, no, I just can't buy that, that's not me, I have to say, well, that isn't you then. In the area of affection, those are the people closest to you. How do you feel? Thinkers are the high standards you have for people. Is your standards higher or lower for the people around you, close to you? How do you see them? When it comes to the doer in the area of affection, do you initiate affection or do you like it initiated toward you? If you initiate affection, your doer's high. If you want it initiated toward you, your doer's going to be low. And then we can ask the question in the area of feeler with affection, do you even need to be hugged? Do you want to be hugged? Do you feel suffocated when you're hugged? If you feel suffocated when you're hugged, your feeler's down there. If you want a lot of hugs and you never got enough, then your feeler's way up at the top. Some of you are at a 32 because our test stops there. If we had a 33 on there, you might mark the 33. So you just look at that and you ask yourself, where do I fit? Again, socially, thinkers, the high standards that you have. So that's the more you'd like to work by yourself, the higher that is. The doer is, do you want to follow? Do you want to lead socially? The feeler is, do I want to be around a lot of people? Then we go back down into stress. The thinker is, I start obsessing. The doer is, I'm going to act. The feeler is, I'm just going to cry. In the area of affection, the thinker is, what are the standards you have? Do you need everything resolved before you get a hug? Then your thinker's high. If you don't need everything resolved, it's low. Do you initiate? That's the doer. And the feeler side, do you want hugs or not? You mark your own. Okay, you got it marked? All right, great. Now, the next thing is we're going to take the test, and we're just going to see how well you do in marking the test yourself and how you would see yourself. One of the things, be sure and look at the test booklet and how do you take this test. And notice here that you take the no's from the yes. Now, if I have 12 in the yes category, and you can say true or false, you can substitute that. I agree or disagree. We have that in step 1. If you have 12 in the yes column and 4 in the minus, in the no column, that gives you 8, right? And then you add 16 and it gives you 24. If you have the yes and the no columns and there's only 4 in the yes column and 12 in the minus column, what's your score? It's a -8.
You had to do the 16 for the thinkers, huh?
What's that?
You had to add the 16 for the thinkers because they couldn't handle negatives.
Right.
Scores,
Exactly. Yeah.
That's funny.
Yeah. Because there was no way to have a minus score and for a thinker and cope with it.
Dysfunctional.
Yeah. They didn't like the minuses. Now we got a typo here. There needs to be a -8 right there in your book. Okay, because it doesn't say -8. So 12 minus, you've got a -8 and a +16, so your score would be an 8. Now, a couple of things that we have there just for helpful hints. Read each question once and quickly. Answer yes or no on the basis of what you feel 51% of the time. Because again, the thinker's going to lock up on it. Huh? No. This isn't a psychological test. It's just how you feel. How are you most comfortable? It's not what people think you ought to be. It's not what you think you ought to be. How are you really comfortable? So what makes you the most comfortable?
So it kind of is our worst, because that's what.
No, it's how you're most comfortable. It's just how you're comfortable. If you got to pick any kind of work environment, what would you pick? You know, what would really make you comfortable? Under stress, what do you do? In affection, where are you at? It says answer with your initial response to the question. If you cannot answer the question, you're allowed to leave one question unanswered on each section. So we can go with that. There's no right or wrong answer. The test only reflects your unique self. For example, there's nothing wrong with preferring to work with things rather than people. So that's the first question. I prefer to work with things rather than people, yes or no? Now, thinkers will sit there and go, but what kind of things and what kind of people and when? And so just...
Good fun to bet 51% of the times.
So just go with your gut response there. Okay. If yes and no questions are confusing, think in terms of true or false. Okay, acceptable, unacceptable. If it helps you to answer, insert your name where the word I appears. Example, John prefers to work with things rather than people. When you're giving this test, it's important to go over the instructions with each person because people don't read them. They just don't read them. And it'll help you to go over that with them. All right, let's pause right there. And you take your test. And then fill in your answers. And then we'll see how close you are. Now, it's one of the things we were just talking about in the break, is that we looked at how you spread apart through personality and past, and how you can come back through understanding in the cross. Those two things. Take up the cross and deny yourself. You know what self is, and now have some understanding in this. You pause under pressure. I need a response under pressure. Where do we meet? Well, I'll wait for you to make a decision, but I need a timeline in which you will make the decision. So in 3 days or whatever it is, please tell me what decision you have. If you're this way, a practical person, a thinker, feeler in the area of affection, then you're going to be a person who wants issues resolved before you get hugs. See, the thinker's high. And so if you had a fight in the morning, could we please talk about it at night? And get closure on it and get it resolved. You're also going to wait for the other person to initiate affection. And we were talking about this. One of the things... Yes. And one of the things that I've said in this is that when you have this pattern where the doer is lower in the area of affection, the thing you would hate is to be rejected in affection. So you won't initiate for the fear of being rejected. Now, think if you get two people like that married together. Well, everybody just, they just sit across from each other getting older in the rocker, but nothing ever happens. And they're waiting for the other person to initiate.
They never have children.
No.
Thank God.
And that's where I tell them,
The doer.
Have a planned day of affection. Have a planned day. Have that set. Know what day it's going to be. Then you don't have to worry about the rejection. You know you're going to have it. You have the people who are perfectionists. That's higher. And the thinker and the doer. Which means that I have high standards for myself and I have to keep those. And so that's the kind of person in a job socially that is given to perfectionism. They like things done just right. They like to work by themselves. They like the task. They take responsibility. They really move with it. Under stress, they're locked up because they're obsessive. And their feeler goes way down, so they don't care much about how you feel either. In the area of affection, they have a low affection need and yet a high dialogue need, and they need every issue resolved. And at that point, you've got to caution them about personality ruling over them. The personality is like a hammer. It's not good or bad. It's how you use it. If it rules over you to the point that nothing can ever be resolved adequately, you're not going to have much of a relationship. And so you've got to learn to let go, because these people are talking about things that you did years ago, and they haven't been able to get on yet. You have the creative person, and that's the doer and the thinker. And so they have very high standards and they want everybody else to keep them. Socially, they've got to work by themselves. They're going to have a hard time working for anyone else. Usually they're what we call Theory X managers, and the way they motivate people is to tell them how lazy and stupid they are. And you've all worked for somebody like that. And what they do is they get you mad and you work on adrenaline. But you do that day after day after day, and people will become passive-aggressive. Here's what a passive-aggressive person is. They give you a big hug, and when they walk away, you realize they wet on you. And so you can only motivate people through anger and adrenaline for so long, and then they're done. So this person's...
It didn't bother me, though.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. It wouldn't have bothered the doer, because they just keep pushing and pushing and pushing. People are a tool. If the tool breaks, you throw the tool away. You don't try to fix it. Just keep going. You never do see any obstacles. Yep. Well, yeah. The smiling assassin is going to be the thinker feeler that's just done with you. See, a thinker will be very loyal to you, but when they've had it, they've really had it. And so the thinker feeler will become the smiling assassin, because, all right, if that's what you want to hear and you want to see, you'll do that. But behind the scenes, I'm not going with you. And so you'll have that. In the area of stress, you got to have an answer now. All of these things are not good or bad. It's who's in charge. If the boat is sinking, I want a doer and a thinker with me that has a plan and doesn't listen to my whinging and pouting and crying, but says, get off this thing. And here's what we're going to do. So they'll need that. In the area of affection, this person is going to initiate dialogue more than they will affection. And so if there's a problem in the family, they're ones that want to talk about it. They're going to bring it right up. They're going to initiate the conversation and get you talking about it. And they have a lot to talk about. So you'll notice they'll come up with a list. They have lists. And so under pressure, they're going to have a list for you. You have the doer and the feeler, and that's a person that socially that loves the crowd, that adapts to a crowd and brings a crowd along with them. When I say they adapt to a crowd, Paul became all things to all people. Under the rule of the Spirit, that's a positive thing. But they're given to the senses because the feeler's high, and they're driven to be involved in the senses. And so they can be a nightmare in terms of leading people and where they're taking them, because they start the party, lead the party, and get everybody at the party. In the area of stress, they're going to make a decision based in emotion. Now that takes some pause. Yeah, doer feeler. Because I'm feeling a certain thing and now I'm going to act, and they're always getting impulsive. And I was saying the other day, if they were a truck, forward and reverse would be wore out. Because just as quickly as they get into it, they realized it was impulsive and they might have hurt someone, their feeler's high enough, and they back out of it. So just ran. They're in and out and in and out. In the area of affection, they're going to initiate affection. And they have a need for that. They're going to go ahead and initiate it. You have the amiable, the thinker and the feeler, the world's value. easygoing, non-threatening, amiable, friendly people that you really like. They calm things down. And socially, they're a team player. And in the area of stress, though, they're going to stall. It's going to take them a while to make a decision. And they'll think and feel, like we said, and then not act. In the area of affection, for them, sex and acceptance are equal. And they're sitting around waiting for somebody else to initiate so it'll be safe. And to know that it's okay and they're not going to be in trouble. So they're thinking a lot about it. Our last couple is the feeler and the doer. And if you have a feeler and a doer, then they're very emotional. But here's the thing, socially, they're waiting for people to come to them. Even though they really need people, they want to be included. Would you please come and get them and include them? So I would not hire a feeler and a doer as a salesperson that had to go out and make cold calls. Because they're craving people, but they don't like the insecurity of maybe being rejected by people, so they're going to stand by the coffee pot all day. But where I would hire him in sales is if I had people coming in to buy something from me, and they were at the front desk, or they were in charge. It's a lot different. They'd be a lot more comfortable at the lumber yard selling refrigerators where you come and ask them than they would be going door to door and asking, do you want a refrigerator? The doer and the feeler can go door to door. They'd be great salesmen. They do cold calls, and they can sell anything. I mean, it doesn't matter what they're selling. They'll move from one item to the next item.
Even curtain rings?
What's that? Even curtain rings. This is the feeler. The doer and the feeler. Because he loves getting out there and initiating, going cold calls and all that. These people like others to come to them. Socially, under stress, again, they're just going to lock up in emotions now. With all these feelings in the past coming up and guilt and inferiority and all that, and they just can't quite get moving. In the area of affection, they want a lot of hugs, and they don't hold any lists. They're short list people. If you need to resolve something with them, you only need to resolve what happened in the last 24 hours. And they're happy with that. They're short list people. The last one here is the multifaceted that you need to talk about. When you travel, I love multifaceted people. Homer's very multifaceted. And so he'd be high. He's a high there with the thinker, the doer, and the feeler, all of them. So I can say to him, we're going to set up here and do some videoing. Now, what do you recommend? What do you think? At the same time, I can say, that guy keeps interrupting me. Would you have a talk with him? And he'd go. Or I could say, hey, that person over there is crying. Would you go? So in the West, we have a saying, a jack of all trades, master of none. Have you heard that? Well, it's not a negative. You can just adapt to nearly anything. What's that?
I always thought it was a negative.
Yeah, that's how people see it, as a negative, but it's not. You can function in a lot of things. In Asia, they say this, he man of many knives, not one sharp. And so you can do a variety of things. You can work in a team. You can work by yourself. You enjoy all those things. And really, you need a job where you can do all those different things. It's not possible to always get a job that tracks with your personality. If you can, it's really great. But we're going to be limiting in that because there's a lot of people around the world that can't pick their jobs. All I'm asking you to do then is to go through the test, and you've got all the information there. And just look at the characteristics of the thinker and acquaint yourself with those, and you'll soon find that you can begin to read those. I was amazed at a young guy in Texas who I've known him since he was, I'm 5 years old. Now he's 25 now, and he's waiting to go into graduate school. And he took a part-time job as a salesman. Now, he'd never sold cars before, never done any of this before. I went to visit him just a couple of months ago. I was through there and stopped, and we had lunch together. And for every month that he's been there, the last 6 months, because graduate school doesn't start till later, every month that he's been there, he's been the top salesman and beat out all the old guys. And they're begging him to stay. He says, no, I'm just doing this part-time because I want to get to school. And they go, no, you can't. And we really want you to stay. And he said, Mike, the secret is from the time I was a kid, I understood thinker, feeler, doer. And he said, I just read the people when they come in and work with them in their shoes. Hey, here's a guy, 25, he's just known this. He said, I've known it since I was a little kid. And he says, and you know who I make the most money off of? The doers. I said, how could you make the most off of a doer? And he said, oh, immediately they come and challenge you and say, this is all I'm going to do. And he said, I was just getting ready to tell them there were special rebates. And they've taken 20% off the sticker price and said, this is all I'm giving you, and it's a big fight, And he said, finally, he just looks at him and says, well, man, you drive a hard bargain, okay. And there was another $8,000 in rebates. But the doer had to have it now, he had to have it then, he had to win, he did all that. And he said, that happens consistently. And then he said he just reads the fear in a thinker of buying a car. And he said, I'm not manipulating anyone. I'm dealing with them where they're at. He said, I'm not trying to be the best salesman. I'm just knowing the people. And he said, I'm just dealing with them and saying, okay, I know you have this and this and this. Here's consumer guide report on this. Here's the safety records on it. Here's how you could make the payments. This is what you do. And listen, you don't have to decide now. And he said, it's funny, the feelers just want to know that they're a person. Yeah, the color. We have red or orange or bright red or bright orange. But he said the feelers just want to know they're a human. That they're a person, that they're not a number, that they just didn't come in and they're just a widget. Yeah. And you're going to get them pushed through and it's so non-personal. And he said, man, I just tell them, look, it's lunchtime. Let's go eat and talk and share. And he just says, it's top salesman. He's 25. So I'm just saying, if you'll read through these things that are all in your book, look at the misunderstandings. That's important for each temperament. What they do under pressure, affection, their needs, their fears, and even in their relationship with God, how they'll see things a little bit differently. And you'll begin to read that in people. You'll see it in people. And then we begin to minister out of those shoes, and we look at how do certain events affect them. So I'd encourage you just to read through the book, look at all those things, and just be prepared with that. You don't have to have it down perfectly. And we're going to take a history. And what's fun about this history you're going to enjoy is that I'm going to take it on my tablet so you'll see exactly how I would take notes in my office. So you'll be looking over my shoulder the whole time as I write things up here. And you'll see where we go with that and how we just pull these things together. Now, I'm going to take the short history. And that short history for me is 7 questions with some follow-up questions. Describe your father how you saw him at his worst. We did this the other day. We were going through it, so it's not new to you. How do you describe your mother? I might ask, how did they describe you? Your 5 worst hurts. What do you do when you feel guilty? How do you describe yourself at your worst? How do you act at your worst? I'm doing the shortened history. Now, I don't want you to do the shortened histories. One of the reasons I can do a shortened history is I took the expanded history for years. So if you take the expanded one for years, you can take the short one and you won't miss things. The other thing is that my ministry is an ambulance ministry. I just show up and I don't even know for who. And I only have a couple of hours with them. Maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes. And the Lord uses me in that way. But for most of you here, you're going to be working with people day after day after day or week after week. We're not in a huge hurry. And so what I'll have you do is we'll look at the back of your notebook where you have the expanded history. You'll start on that today. You won't finish it today, but you'll start on it. And as I do the expanded history in my office, because I get to see people every week, it may take me 6 weeks to do a history. And so I'll do 1 hour of history taking, and then after we've done that, I want to leave them with some understanding and some hope. You wouldn't believe the times people have said to me, you actually talked to me as a counselor. You've actually said something. You've actually made an observation. You've helped me.
So that you're free.
Yeah, I'm free. Yeah, that carries a little weight. But what I'll do is I'll take an hour of history. I'll be taking my notes. I'll look for identity messages. Identity, you'll see me do that. Then idolatry, where that fits in. So you'll see me make those little notes about those things. And then the next hour I say this. I want you to see the foundation I stand on and where we're moving with this. I'd like you to think about this in the next week. Here's a spirit, soul, and a body. You were born dead to God. You have lying thoughts, lying emotions. How does that apply to you? And we go through that. And so I'll give them a little section of the lectures to think about in that week. And it's amazing, after you've taken just a little bit of history, you'll help them with that as you're going through it. And say, think about that a little bit more. The next week I take a little more history and I say, now, I want to show you these identity circles. Here's how you feel at your worst moment. Here's how you've covered it up. Do you see where you might have got some messages like that? And how this affects you, and you end up with a problem because you're undressed by the situation or the event. And think about that next week. And so you work through it, and then when you give the circuit diagram, the same thing happens to them that happened to you in training. All the pieces are coming together in that. Now, what I'll be doing when I give a history is I give the circuit diagram in 20 minutes. Well, that's not the model to follow. Okay, so that's a mistake I've made in the past, in that people thought that was the model and that was the goal, to do that fast and to do it quickly and to give people all the answers for all their problems right away. I can tell you in the long term that doesn't have a good results. Because the next day there'll be confusion over this, and this. And so it's better to do it week by week and day by day. And that'll probably be more of your ministry and where it fits in. So I'm not the model on this, but I can at least show you how I take a history and put that together in a short history. This is what I'd be doing in my office, so you just follow along with me, and this is kind of where we would go if I had an hour with somebody. I want to take some time to get to know you, because it's not good to just counsel people out of my shoes. I have answers that are good for me, but I don't know if they'd be good for you. And the Bible says to take up the cross and deny yourself, but what is self? So I want to understand that a little bit and to examine and probe my ways and then go to the Lord. We want to go to the Lord in all this, but I want to get to know you. And it's really fun for me because I've only lived one life, but when people share their lives with me, I get to live another one. And so that's really enjoyable for me. And I don't want to do anything frightening. I'm going to ask a few questions. They're not deep, dark, scary things. And you don't have to answer. If you don't want to answer one, the whole thing isn't built on you answering any particular question for me. Because I'm just looking at who you are. And I think you'll like the information because it's going to tell you how you act, why you act that way, what kind of job you ought to be in, why you might have conflict in relationships, why sometimes you're depressed, those kind of things. So I want to look at all that with you. Okay. Now, one of the things we'll be talking about is that everybody's unique. And so you have people that are thinkers, and if you're a thinker or you're married to a thinker, this is the look you see on their face where they're just staring straight ahead because they're in the biggest playground in the world in their brain. You've got feelers, they cry when the leaves fall off the trees. And they're very subjective people. Here's the difference between objective and subjective. You're walking down the street and your best friend gets off the phone and they just found out their mother died. So when they come to you, they just stare at you and walk through you because they're in shock. An objective person says, what's wrong with them? But a subjective person says, oh, what's wrong with me? And feelers are more subjective people. Then you have people that are doers, and you've probably worked for one before. They're driven, they push, they drive, they don't see any obstacles. Now, everyone is a blend of those three things. So what would you be first, and what do you think you'd be second?
Well, I think I'd be a feeler. First.
Okay. Feeler? And then second?
I think probably a thinker.
Okay. All right. Describe your dad for me at his worst when you grew up, how you saw him. He didn't have to be that way. It's just how you saw him as a kid. Just 3 words that describe Dad at his worst.
Well, I hardly picture him at his worst because, he was Dad. So
Yeah.
I didn't really see him. He was a very nice man. He went to church. Everybody seemed to like him. I think the only time he ever got worse is when I did something wrong and I needed a spanking. That's the only time I ever saw him at his worst. But he would never blow up or get angry. He was probably more passive than show an outright anger for something. He wasn't he never exploded. You know, it was just calm.
Do you spend much time with you?
Yes, but not as much as I would like.
Okay. Do you give you direction? Like,
No.
can't you're going, okay.
No.
How about communication?
I don't think there was much communication.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, not needed.
Yeah. If he was going to describe you when you were 16, what would he say?
Well, I'd probably say that restless.
Mm. How about your mom? How'd you describe her at her worst?
Well, she's like my dad. She didn't have, a like you say, a real bad side to her that I can remember. You know, and I don't have any real event that sticks out in my life that, might see her that way. I just, she was probably passive also in the relationship.
When you had to make a decision, who would you talk to?
I'd probably talk to my mom.
Who wore the pants in the family?
Probably mom.
What would your dad do when he got upset with her? Or you never seen him upset?
Yeah, I've seen him upset, and I remember when they would discuss, they would discuss, and then, they'd turn to me and say, we're only discussing this because we really love each other, but we just need to make discussions. They'd have disagreements.
Uh-huh.
But it was, they didn't throw plates at each other or anything like that.
Yeah.
So
it's a pretty conflict-free home.
Conflict-free home. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did your mom communicate much? Sit and talk to you?
No, not much.
How about time?
No.
How about Dad? Did he spend much time with you?
Nope, I don't think so.
How'd that make you feel?
Well, I think I would just feel like not wanted, not needed, like I said before.
Okay, if you think of the 5 worst hurts in your life, and those can be big things or little things. So it could be you're going down the road and you think about kids making fun of you or somebody died, but it's things that hurt you. And think to kind of break it up and make it easier from your earliest memory through grade school, junior high, high school, university up to today. What would they be? Things that just stick out.
Well, I think one of the biggest things that sticks out is being in grade school and being rejected by the other boys to play sports.
Yeah.
That would be a big one, because at least I wasn't picked second. I wish I wasn't picked last. I was picked second to last, but that's... Yeah, right. And also, I remember also my dad liked sports. He liked sport. He was a real fan of sports. I didn't like sports, partially because I had no coordination. So I couldn't, catch the ball or throw the ball. And so that's why I wasn't picked for the other teams and anything like that. And anytime I tried to go out for sports, my dad would encourage me, but then, I couldn't please him. He wanted me to even to play tennis. I couldn't do that. I couldn't hit the ball, so it was,
Yeah.
So it was really, yeah, so I gave up. I gave up on trying to please him in that area. Yeah, I just
how'd
ran
that
away.
make you?
I ran away from that. I didn't want to go anything to do it.
Yeah.
I didn't get coordinated until I was about 15 or 16.
So how'd that make you feel to get picked last? I mean,
That's awful.
failure, unacceptable.
Unacceptable, yeah.
Were you kind of hoping that if you could succeed in that, Dad would really be happy?
I think he would have been, more pleased with me.
Yeah. Okay. Any good at sports today?
Yeah.
Okay. About a couple more hurts.
I remember one in high school. Well, one of the things I would do is I remember trying to get acceptance by dating a lot. But those would only last like a few months and so on. But one time I met a girl when I was 18, and I fell in love with her, and we went out for about a year together, and then she broke off with me. And that was a big hurt.
Yeah. Did she tell you why she broke up?
Yeah, it was somebody else. She just went off with somebody else.
I never had that happen.
Never?
Yeah. Well, how did that make you
Oh,
feel?
man, I wasn't good enough. You know, something is wrong with me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unlovable, unwanted. And that was a big one. That was the only time in my life I can ever remember that I just wanted to end it all. But then I started thinking about the other person. It was in oncoming traffic. I thought about the other person coming toward me. That's not fair to him.
Yeah, yeah,
So that was the only time I remember that. You know.
yeah. Okay. Couple more hurts and you're off the hook.
Yeah, well, I remember when I was 5. I remember when I was 5 once, I got the message wrong. I thought I was going to go out with my parents. And so when the time came, you know, to take our bath and shower for the night to get ready for bed, everybody was getting ready for bed, all the other kids, but not me. I was getting ready to go out. And so I went to my mom and said, Mom, what do I put on? She said, well, you put on your pajamas. I said, what do you mean? And I got real upset and mad because she says, you're not going out with us. And I said, well, I thought you said this morning that I was. So I'd been waiting all day for that. And I just remember, I must have pouted for 3 days on that. And you know, I just remember that's a thing in my life that really made me feel rejected. You know,
Yeah.
that I wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, it was probably one of those situations they couldn't take me out, you know, but I didn't understand it at 5.
Sure, sure. How'd you do in school?
Average student.
Yeah. Okay. All right, you got one more hurt? Think of?
No, can't think of anything right
All right.
comes to mind. I might think of something later on.
Okay, if you think of something later on, tell me.
Okay.
When we're at our very worst and nothing's working out and the girlfriend's broke up with you and you're laying in bed, the enemy's not going to miss that opportunity to whisper. So what's he going to say to you? Well, what kind of things will he continually whisper?
But I think you're worthless. There's something wrong with me, he would say.
Yeah.
You got to try harder. You know. He'd say things like, well, if you only did this, if you only had done that.
Yeah. How do you act at your worst? Do you have your wife's phone number?
Well, if things get real frustrated, I explode.
And what do you do when you explode?
Well, it's a feeling like, it's just like I keep it all inside until 1 minute I just burst. And it's like an explosion of anger, and so I just yell and scream and, you know, kick my feet.
Okay.
I haven't hit her yet.
Yeah, short kids.
That'd be another problem.
Yeah. Okay. Now, think of the thing you feel most guilty about, but don't tell me, because I don't want to know what it is. My follow-up question is more important. It's the kind of thing you think about and you just kind of cringe and you go, I shouldn't have said that, done that, or whatever. But don't tell me what it is.
Okay.
Here's my follow-up question. What do you do when you feel guilty?
I run away.
Okay.
Withdraw.
Okay.
I want to get as far away from myself as I can. Doesn't help.
Yeah.
Where I go, I come.
Yeah. What do you do when you run? How do you get away from yourself? What do you do? I mean, do you go read? Do you watch movies? How do you avoid?
I might go out and just sulk, or just going over and over the thing, or I think one activity that I would do. I might go find an activity to do, like work on a hobby, or just go find something to do. And I think when I was younger, I would just go out and look for somebody else. But and being older, I would just withdraw and go try to do some activity, some physical activity. I'd have to do some physical activity.
Okay.
But that helps me. When I'm doing something physical, that brings me back to reality, because all that time I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And I can calm down and come back.
Yeah, that'd be good for you as a feeler and a thinker to get out and have some activity. Okay, well, let me put this together for you and just show you what it says, and then we'll kind of look at where we go from there.
I'd be interested in that, because
Okay.
I wonder what you're going to come up with all that.
Okay.